The single dad was having tea alone in a corner cafe until two twin girls slid into the booth across from him and whispered 6 words that would change everything. "We're in danger. Pretend you're our father." He didn't hesitate. He smiled like a father whose daughters just surprised him after school. He asked their names loud enough for nearby tables to hear. The twins caught on instantly. Their hands were shaking. 30 seconds later, a man in a gray suit walked through the door. Behind him, Councilman Robert Vance. Silver hair, campaign billboard smile, the kind of power that bends laws before breakfast. Vance approached the booth. His voice was warm, apologetic, rehearsed. "I'm so sorry. These are my stepdaughters. They've run off again." He reached for the nearest girl's arm. She pulled back like she'd been burned. And the father, a stranger 30 seconds ago, read the terror in her eyes and made a choice that would destroy his life or save theirs. He stood, placed cash on the table, looked Vance in the eye and said calmly, "I'm their father, and they're not going anywhere with you." The cafe went silent. Vance's smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. Their father? That's interesting, because their birth certificates say something very different. The stranger guided the twins toward the exit. Vance didn't follow, but his parting words were a promise soaked in threat. "I'll see you very soon." What Vance didn't know, the man walking away with his stepdaughters wasn't just a bookstore worker playing hero. He was someone who'd spent 11 years talking armed men out of killing hostages. Someone trained to read deception at a glance. To someone who'd walked away from that life because the last negotiation cost him everything. And now, holding the hands of 2 terrified children who'd gambled their lives on a stranger's kindness, he was about to step back into the fire. If you believe courage isn't the absence of fear, but the refusal to walk away when children are in danger, stay with this story. Because what happens next will prove that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun. It's a voice that refuses to break. Before we begin, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Tell me in the comments, would you risk everything to protect a stranger's child? But to understand how a quiet man with a used paperback became willing to sacrifice his freedom for 2 girls he'd never met, we need to go back 5 days to the life he'd built in the shadows. For the Pearl Room at Powell's smelled like old paper and dust. Marcus Chen worked in silence, sliding philosophy books back into their alphabetical places. His hands moved without thinking. Kant, Kierkegaard, Lao Tzu. The afternoon light through the tall windows was gray and soft. Customers passed him without looking. He preferred it that way. He clocked out at 4:47. The time card machine beeped. He nodded to the shift manager and walked out into the drizzle. Portland rain wasn't heavy. It just never stopped. He pulled his jacket tighter and headed east on Burnside. 3 blocks later, he reached the community center. Inside, the after-school program was winding down. Kids sat at tables with construction paper and glue sticks. Marcus scanned the room and found her. Lily sat in the corner, tongue poking out in concentration. Her hands worked carefully on something made of wire and painted pasta. "Dad!" She looked up and smiled. "Look." She held up a mobile. 9 planets dangled from fishing line. Saturn's rings were rigatoni she'd painted yellow. "That's beautiful," Marcus said. "Mrs. Kim says Pluto doesn't count anymore, but I put it in anyway." "Good call." Lily packed her mobile into a shoebox, gentle as surgery. They walked home through the drizzle. She talked the whole way, about how Jupiter has 79 moons, about how her friend Maya got in trouble for throwing erasers, about whether black holes actually ate things or just crushed them. Marcus listened. He always listened. Their apartment was on the second floor of a building that had seen better decades. The carpet in the hallway was brown and worn. The locks on their door were good, though. Marcus had replaced them himself. Inside, the apartment was small. A couch that sagged in the middle. A kitchen table with mismatched chairs. Lily's room had glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Marcus's room had a bed and a lamp. That was enough. He made dinner while Lily did homework at the table. Stir-fry with vegetables and rice. Nothing fancy. The kitchen window fogged from the steam. They ate together. Lily asked whether Pluto should still count as a planet. "What do you think?" Marcus said. "I think it doesn't matter what scientists say. It's still up there doing its thing." "Fair point." She pushed rice around her plate. "Dad? Yeah? How come you don't have any friends?" Marcus set down his fork. "I have you." "That's not the same." "Sure it is." Lily frowned. She had her mother's eyes. Dark and sharp and hard to lie to. Don't you get lonely?" Marcus reached across the table and tapped her forehead gently. "Not when I've got you asking me a million questions." She smiled, but she didn't look convinced. After dinner, Lily brushed her teeth and changed into pajamas covered in cartoon astronauts. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed while she arranged her stuffed animals in the exact right order. "Tell me about Mom," Lily said. It was the same request every few nights. Marcus told her the same story. About how her mother was brave. About how she believed people should help each other even when it was hard. About how she laughed loud and cried during sad movies, and always, always stood up for what was right. He didn't tell her the rest. He never would. Lily's eyes got heavy. Did she like space stuff? She loved it. Good. Lily yawned. So then she can see me from up there. Marcus's throat tightened. Yeah, she can. He kissed her forehead and turned off the light. The glow in the dark stars on her ceiling pulsed faintly green. The apartment was quiet after that. Marcus made tea. Earl Grey, no sugar. He sat on the couch with a paperback he'd read 3 times already. The radiator hissed. Outside, the rain tapped against the window in no particular rhythm. His life was small, controlled, safe. No one at the bookstore knew his real name used to appear in classified briefings. No one at Lily's school knew he'd once walked unarmed into a compound in Nairobi and talked 6 men into laying down their weapons. No one in this city knew that for 11 years his voice had been the last thing standing between hostages and body bags. That life was gone. Buried with Elena in a cemetery outside Arlington. Marcus sipped his tea. The apartment was warm. The book was familiar. Lily was asleep down the hall. This was enough. It had to be. He set his alarm for 6:30. Tomorrow would be another shift. Another walk to the community center. Another quiet evening with his daughter. Another ordinary day. Except it wouldn't be. The cafe on Hawthorne smelled like espresso and wet pavement. Marcus sat in a booth near the back window, a cup of Earl Grey cooling beside a worn copy of Marcus Aurelius. Rain streaked the glass. Outside, the city moved in gray blurs. He had 40 minutes before he needed to pick up Lily. He turned a page. The Stoics always made sense. Control what you can. Accept what you can't. Keep moving forward. The cafe was half full. Students with laptops. A couple sharing pastries. And the hiss of the espresso machine. Quiet conversation. Normal Tuesday sounds. The door opened. 2 girls stepped inside. They were maybe 12. Identical twins. Same dark hair. Same wide eyes. One wore a blue jacket 2 sizes too big. The other wore red. Both jackets looked slept in. Their eyes were swollen, red from crying. They scanned the cafe like prey animals checking for predators. Marcus noticed. Old habits never died. He watched them without watching. The way they moved. The tension in their shoulders. The way the one in blue gripped her sister's hand. They locked eyes with him. Crossed the cafe. Slid into his booth without asking. The one in blue leaned forward. Her voice was barely a whisper. "We're in danger. Pretend you're our father." Marcus didn't move, didn't blink, and his brain shifted into a gear he hadn't used in 9 years. Assess, adapt, commit. He smiled. A dad's smile. Warm and easy. "Emma, Sophie," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "You're early. Did practice let out?" The twins froze for half a second. Then the one in blue nodded fast. "Yeah, Dad. Coach canceled." Marcus gestured to the bench. "Sit down. Want some hot chocolate?" The one in red shook her head. Her hands trembled. The door opened again. A man in a gray suit stepped inside. Mid-40s, athletic build, scanning faces with cold precision. He locked eyes with the twins, moved toward the booth. Behind him came another man. Silver hair. Tailored coat that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. The kind of face you saw on campaign billboards. Practiced smile. Eyes like polished stone. Marcus knew that face. Well, everyone in Portland did. Councilman Robert Vance. Vance approached with the smooth confidence of someone who'd never been told no. His smile was warm. His eyes weren't. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," Vance said. His voice carried across the cafe. "Performance for an audience. These are my stepdaughters. They've run off again." He reached for the girl in blue. She pulled back like she'd been shocked. "Their mother just passed," Vance continued. "They've been struggling, acting out." Marcus watched the girl's face, the way her jaw locked, the way her pupils dilated, the micro-expression of pure terror that flashed across her features before she controlled it. He'd seen that look before, in Nairobi, in Bogota, in rooms where people lied about who held the gun. This man was dangerous. These children were terrified. Marcus stood. Slow, yet deliberate. He placed a $5 bill on the table. "I'm their father," Marcus said quietly. "And they're not going anywhere with you." The cafe went still. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The espresso machine hissed into silence. Vance's smile didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "Their father?" His voice stayed warm, amused. "That's interesting, because their birth certificates say something very different." Marcus guided the twins out of the booth, one hand on each girl's shoulder, gentle but firm. "We can discuss custody arrangements through my lawyer," Marcus said. "Right now, my daughters and I are leaving." Vance didn't move to stop them, but the man in the gray suit shifted his weight, calculated whether to intervene. Marcus met his eyes, held them. The kind of look that said, "Don't." The man in the suit stayed put. Vance's smile widened. It didn't reach anywhere near his eyes. "I'll see you very soon, mister." Marcus didn't answer. He walked the twins toward the door. His hand stayed on their shoulders. Steady. Calm. Outside, the rain had picked up, cold mist against his face. Marcus's car was parked 2 blocks away. He walked at a normal pace. Didn't run. Running meant panic. Panic meant mistakes. The girl in blue looked up at him. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Marcus said. They reached his car, a 15-year-old Honda with rust along the wheel wells. He unlocked the doors. The twins climbed into the back seat without being told. Marcus got behind the wheel, started the engine. His hands were steady on the steering wheel, but inside his chest, his heart slammed against his ribs like it was trying to break free. He'd just claimed 2 children who weren't his. He'd just challenged a city councilman in front of witnesses. He'd just stepped across a line drawn in his own blood 9 years ago. The line that said, "Never again. Never use those skills. Never let your voice put anyone in danger." He looked in the rearview mirror. The twins sat pressed together, holding hands. The one in blue had tears running down her face. The one in red was shaking. Marcus put the car in drive. He'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Marcus drove 3 blocks before the girl in blue started talking. "Our mom died 3 months ago," she said. Her voice shook. "Vance said she fell, but she didn't. She wouldn't have." The one in red gripped her sister's hand. "We heard him on the phone 2 days ago. He was talking about money, about a housing project, and about making people disappear if they complained." "We recorded it," the one in blue added. She pulled a phone from her jacket pocket. Cracked screen. Battery at 12%. "We tried to tell our grandmother, but Vance had her declared crazy, legally incompetent. She can't even visit us now." Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Rain blurred the windshield. "What are your names?" he asked. "Emma," said the one in blue. "Sophie," said the one in red. "I'm Marcus." Emma's hands wouldn't stop shaking. "We've been running since yesterday, sleeping in a park bathroom. We saw you sitting there, and you looked, I don't know, safe." Marcus turned onto Martin Luther King Boulevard. The police station was 6 blocks ahead. Brick building with bars on the windows and a flag hanging limp in the rain. "We're going to the police," Marcus said. "They'll help you." Sophie made a sound like a wounded animal. "He owns them. He owns everyone." "Not everyone," Marcus said. But when they walked through the glass doors into the fluorescent brightness of the precinct lobby, Marcus saw it happen in real time. The desk sergeant looked up, middle-aged, tired eyes, standard-issue boredom. "Help you?" "These girls need protection," Marcus said. "They're in danger from their guardian." The sergeant's pen hovered over a form. "Guardian's name?" "Robert Vance." The sergeant's expression didn't change, but his posture did. The way his shoulders pulled back, the way his eyes flicked to the phone on his desk. "Councilman Vance?" "Yes." "And you are?" "A concerned citizen." The sergeant picked up the phone, dialed without breaking eye contact, spoke quietly into the receiver. Marcus couldn't hear the words. He didn't need to. He read it in the sergeant's body language. The shift from bureaucratic disinterest to careful politeness. The kind of careful that meant someone important was listening on the other end of that call. Marcus took Emma's hand, then Sophie's. "We're leaving," he said. The sergeant stood. "Sir, I need you to—" Marcus walked out. The twins followed. The rain had picked up, cold needles against his skin. He drove east, away from downtown, away from the police station where phones got picked up too quickly. "Where are we going?" Emma whispered. Marcus looked at them in the rearview mirror. 2 12-year-old girls who'd been running for 2 days, who'd slept in a bathroom, who'd gambled their lives on a stranger in a cafe. He made a choice that rewired every promise he'd made to himself for the last 9 years. "My place," Marcus said. His apartment was small and warm and smelled like the stir-fry he'd made for dinner 6 hours ago. Lily would be asleep by now. Marcus checked his watch. Nearly 9. He unlocked the door. Lily stood in the hallway in her astronaut pajamas, rubbing her eyes. She looked at Marcus, then at the twins behind him. "Dad?" Marcus knelt to her level, eye to eye, the way he always did when something mattered. "Lily, these are Emma and Sophie. They're going to stay with us for a little while. They need help. Can you help me make them feel safe?" Lily studied the twins with the fierce seriousness of a child who understood more than she should. She looked at their red eyes, their dirty jackets, and the way they held hands like letting go meant drowning. "Do you like hot chocolate?" Lily asked. Sophie nodded. Emma started crying. Lily disappeared into the kitchen. Marcus heard the clatter of mugs, the microwave humming. He showed the twins where to put their jackets, gave them towels, let them wash their faces in the bathroom sink. When they came out, Lily had 3 mugs of hot chocolate on the coffee table, marshmallows floating on top. The twins sat on the couch. They drank without speaking. Lily sat between them, explaining the rules of the apartment. Quiet after 10. No shoes on the carpet. The bathroom door stuck, so you had to jiggle the handle. Marcus stood in the doorway and watched his 9-year-old daughter do what he'd spent 9 years trying not to do. Step into the fire to help someone who needed it. But after Lily went to bed, Marcus sat with the twins. Emma handed him the phone. Marcus pressed play. Vance's voice filled the small apartment, smooth, confident, discussing permit approvals and zoning violations and payments that would make problems disappear. He mentioned a housing development on the east side. Families who'd been living there for decades. Numbers that meant displacement. Numbers that meant profit. Then Vance's voice dropped lower, almost casual. "If anyone asks about Catherine, stick to the story. She fell. She was drinking. It was an accident. The medical examiner is handled." The recording ended. Marcus set the phone down. Emma and Sophie sat pressed together on the couch, watching him with identical dark eyes. "Your mother's name was Catherine?" Marcus asked. Emma nodded. "Oh, and Vance is your stepfather?" "Was," Sophie whispered. "We don't have anyone now, just Grandma, and she can't help us." Marcus looked at these 2 girls who'd trusted a stranger because they had no one else to trust, who'd been brave enough to record a man who'd killed their mother, who'd been running for 2 days because the people who were supposed to protect them were bought and paid for. He'd walked away from this, from negotiations where children's lives hung in the balance, from rooms where his voice was the only thing standing between survival and catastrophe. He'd promised Elena's grave he would never do it again. But these girls were sitting on his couch, and the recording on that cracked phone was evidence of murder and corruption, and the man hunting them had the police in his pocket. Marcus didn't have a badge anymore, didn't have federal authority, didn't have anything except a bookstore job and a daughter who asked questions he couldn't answer. But he had something Vance didn't know about yet. He had 11 years of training in how to talk armed men into laying down their weapons, how to read lies in the micro-movements of a face, how to construct a persona so convincing that warlords believed he was their only path to survival. Emma's eyes were closing. Sophie was already asleep, curled against her sister. Marcus carried them to the couch one at a time, covered them with the blanket from his bed, turned off the lights. He sat in the dark and listened to Vance's recorded voice one more time. The man had killed his wife, had corrupted a police department, had declared an old woman incompetent to silence her, had sent men to hunt down 2 12-year-olds. And now those girls were asleep on Marcus's couch, which meant Marcus wasn't just protecting them anymore. He was pretending to be their father. And if the pretense failed, if Vance exposed him, if the courts saw through the lie, if Marcus couldn't hold the fiction together long enough to get these girls to safety, all 4 of them would pay the price. Marcus opened his laptop and began to research family law, custody procedures, and exactly how long he could sustain a lie before the entire structure collapsed around him. The knock came at 8 in the morning. Marcus had been awake for hours, He drilled the twins on the basics: favorite colors, allergies, the name of the lullaby their mother used to sing. Emma was a fast study. Sophie needed more time, but she had the details down. Lily was still asleep. The twins sat on the couch in borrowed pajamas, hands folded in their laps. Marcus opened the door. The woman on the other side was mid-40s, wearing a blazer that had seen better years. She held a clipboard like a weapon. Her eyes were tired but sharp. Marcus Chen? Yes. Sharon Mills, Child Protective Services. She showed him a badge. I'm responding to concerns about 2 minor children living at this address with an unrelated adult. Marcus's breathing didn't change. His expression stayed neutral. Every muscle in his body remembered what to do. Assess. Adapt. Commit. Please come in, Marcus said. Sharon stepped inside. She scanned the apartment. The couch where the twins sat. The kitchen table with breakfast dishes still out. The worn carpet. The radiator that clanked. Her gaze landed on Emma and Sophie. Girls, she said. I'm Ms. Mills. I'm here to make sure you're safe. Emma looked at Marcus. He gave the smallest nod. We're safe, Emma said. Sharon pulled a pen from her pocket, clicked it. And who is this man to you? Our dad, Sophie whispered. Sharon wrote something on her clipboard. Your legal guardian is listed as Robert Vance. Is that correct? Emma's jaw tightened. He's not our dad. Marcus is. Sharon looked at Marcus. Can I see some identification? Birth certificates for the girls? Custody paperwork? Marcus kept his voice calm. Level. The tone he'd used in rooms where people held guns to hostages' heads. We just relocated from Seattle. The paperwork is being transferred. It takes time. How long have you been in Portland? 4 days. Sharon's pen hovered. And the girls' school enrollment? We're homeschooling while we transition. I didn't want to disrupt their education mid-semester. Do you have documentation of that? I'm working on it. Sharon turned to the twins. Sophie, what's your favorite food? Sophie didn't hesitate. Marcus had drilled this. Macaroni and cheese, the kind with the powder, not the fancy stuff. Emma, what time do you go to bed? 9 on school nights, 10 on weekends. Sharon made notes. What does your father do for work? He works at a bookstore, Emma said. Powell's. He reshelves books at night. Sharon looked at Marcus. That's a night shift. Who watches the girls while you're working? Marcus gestured to the hallway. My daughter Lily. She's 9. The twins are 12. They're old enough to stay home for a few hours. I'd like to speak with Lily. Marcus knocked softly on Lily's door. She answered in her astronaut pajamas, a rubbing sleep from her eyes. Lily, this is Ms. Mills. She has some questions. Lily looked at Sharon with the same serious intensity she brought to everything. Okay. How do you feel about Emma and Sophie staying here? Sharon asked. They're nice. Sophie likes space stuff like me. Emma knows a lot about fish. Do you feel safe? Yeah. Has your father ever hurt you or scared you? Lily's face scrunched up like the question didn't make sense. No. He's my dad. Sharon wrote more notes. The apartment was quiet except for the scratch of her pen and the radiator's metallic ping. She turned back to Marcus. Mr. Chen, I need to see documentation within 72 hours. School enrollment, medical records, proof of custody. If you can't provide that, and I'll have to escalate this case. I understand. Do you have a lawyer? Not yet. Sharon handed him a card. You should get one. Robert Vance has filed concerns that you're an unrelated adult claiming guardianship without legal basis. Marcus took the card. His hand didn't shake. Sharon looked at the twins one more time. Girls, if you ever feel unsafe or need help, you can call the number on this card. Anytime. Day or night? Emma nodded. Sophie stared at her hands. Sharon left. The door clicked shut behind her. Marcus stood in the center of the apartment. The twins looked up at him with identical dark eyes. "How did you do that?" Emma whispered. "You lied to her face, and she believed you." Marcus didn't answer. He walked to the window and watched Sharon get into a county sedan and drive away. Lily appeared at his elbow. "Dad, are Emma and Sophie really going to stay?" "For now." "What happens if you can't get the papers?" Marcus looked down at his daughter, 9 years old, too smart for her own good. Elena's eyes looking back at him. "I'll figure it out," he said. Lily went back to her room. The twins stayed on the couch. Marcus's phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. He answered. "Mr. Chen." A man's voice, clipped, professional. "This is Daniel Grayson. I represent Robert Vance. I'm calling to inform you that my client has filed an emergency custody motion in Multnomah County Family Court. You're named as the respondent. The hearing is scheduled for Monday at 9 a.m. You'll receive official notice by mail, but I wanted to extend the courtesy of a personal call." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. I'll be there." "I assume you'll have legal representation." "Yes." "Good. Because Mr. Vance takes the welfare of his stepdaughters very seriously. He's prepared to demonstrate that you're an unstable stranger with no legal claim to these children. I'd advise you to consider returning them voluntarily before this becomes a criminal matter." The line went dead. Marcus set the phone down. His hands were steady. His breathing was controlled, but his mind was calculating angles and exits and the exact number of hours until he had to walk into a courtroom and convince a judge he was someone he wasn't. 5 days. That's all he had. 5 days to become a father to 2 girls who weren't his. To forge a history that didn't exist. To construct a lie so airtight that a family court judge and a corporate attorney couldn't tear it apart. And if he failed, Emma and Sophie went back to Vance, and Marcus went to prison for kidnapping. He looked at the twins. They were watching him, waiting. "We need to talk," Marcus said quietly. "I need to know everything about your mother. Everything about your life before she died. Every detail you can remember." Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a small photo, worn at the edges. A woman with dark hair and a gentle smile, her arms around 2 little girls. "Her name was Catherine," Emma said, "and we need you to make Vance believe you loved her." The apartment was silent. Lily slept in her room. The twins were curled on the couch, breathing soft and even. Marcus sat at the kitchen table. The court summons spread in front of him like evidence at a crime scene. 5 days until the hearing. 5 days to become someone he wasn't. He stared at the photograph Emma had given him. Catherine, dark hair, gentle smile, arms around 2 little girls who still had a mother. Marcus closed his eyes, let himself remember. Nairobi, 2011. A warehouse district where the air smelled like diesel and rot. 6 armed men holding a family hostage inside a shipping container. The local police had tried negotiating. Failed. The FBI was called in. Marcus walked to the container alone. No vest. No weapon. Just a phone and a voice trained to dismantle violence 1 word at a time. He talked for 4 hours. He listened more than he spoke. He mirrored their anger, validated their grievances, found the pressure points where fear lived and pressed gently until it shifted into something else. By sunset, the family walked out. The men surrendered. Marcus never fired a shot, and he never raised his voice. His supervisor called it a miracle. Marcus called it Tuesday. He opened his eyes. The photograph stared back at him. Bogota, 2013. A cartel safe house. 3 American engineers taken during a pipeline inspection. The cartel wanted money. The company wanted proof of life. Marcus was the bridge between worlds that spoke different languages of violence. He spent 6 days on the phone, mapping relationships, building rapport, learning names, families, debts. He found the one man in the room who had a daughter the same age as one of the hostages. Marcus talked about fatherhood, about legacy, about what kind of man you became when your child watched what you did. The engineers came home. The cartel walked away richer but alive. Everyone claimed victory. Marcus's clearance level went up. His legend grew. Marcus stood. He poured himself water. His hands were steady. They'd been steady in Nairobi, in Bogota, in Detroit, when a man with a hunting rifle held his ex-wife at gunpoint in a church parking lot, and Marcus talked him down in 19 minutes flat. Steady hands, calm voice, the ability to read a room like sheet music. That's what the Bureau valued. That's what made him exceptional. That's what got Elena killed. Kiev, February 2017. An extraction gone wrong. A journalist embedded with the team, his wife. Marcus pushed the memory away. Not now. Not yet. He looked at the twins. Sophie had her arm around Emma even in sleep. They'd told him everything today. How Catherine met Vance at a charity fundraiser. How he courted her with expensive dinners and political connections. How the twins never trusted him, but their mother was lonely, and Vance was charming and powerful and persistent. How Catherine started asking questions about a housing development on the east side. How she found irregularities in permits and zoning approvals. How she confronted Vance one night at dinner. How she fell down the stairs 3 days later. The medical examiner ruled it accidental. Vance cried at the funeral. The twins knew better. Marcus studied their faces. The way Emma's jaw set when she was angry. The way Sophie's hands trembled when she talked about her mother. He memorized the details they'd shared. Catherine's favorite song. The Czech lullaby she sang at bedtime. The camping trip to Mount Hood. The inside jokes. The ordinary moments that made a family real. He would need all of it. Every detail. Every gesture. Every memory that wasn't his. The laptop sat on the table. Marcus opened it, searched family court procedures, custody law, burden of proof. He needed to convince a judge he was the twins' biological father. Without DNA, without documentation, with nothing but a story and 2 girls who'd spent 1 day learning to call him Dad. It was impossible. Marcus had done impossible before. Detroit, 2015. A barricaded subject with dementia who thought his own family were intruders. Traditional negotiation wasn't working. The man didn't remember his daughter's name. Marcus spent 2 hours building a new reality, not arguing with the delusion, entering it, becoming part of the world the man believed in, creating trust where memory had failed. The man walked out peacefully, hugged his daughter, didn't remember Marcus 5 minutes later. But it worked because Marcus understood something fundamental. People don't believe facts. They believe stories. And if you build the story carefully enough, if you make every detail fit, if you commit fully to the fiction, the truth becomes whatever you make them see. Marcus looked at the photograph again. Catherine, a woman he'd never met, a life he'd never lived. He needed to become the man who loved her, who lost her, who came back too late to save her, but not too late to save her children. 5 days to construct a history, 5 days to memorize a love story that never existed. He opened a new document, started writing, met Catherine in Seattle, 2010. Coffee shop near Pike Place Market. She was reading. He made a joke about her book. She laughed. They talked for 3 hours. The relationship was complicated. He traveled for work. She wanted stability. They tried. They failed. They drifted apart. She moved to Portland, met Vance, got married, and Marcus stayed away out of respect. Then she died, and the twins reached out, and Marcus finally came home to be the father he should have been all along. It was believable, simple, impossible to verify. Perfect. Marcus wrote for 2 hours, building the timeline, filling in gaps, creating a version of himself that could exist beside Catherine's real life without contradicting the facts the twins knew. Outside, rain started again, soft taps against the window. Marcus thought about Elena, about the promise he'd made at her grave. Never again. Never use these skills. Never let his voice put someone at risk. But 2 girls were asleep on his couch, and a man who'd killed their mother was coming for them with lawyers and money and the full weight of political power. Marcus could walk away. Call the real authorities. Hope someone clean existed in a system Vance had already corrupted. Or he could do what he did best. Build a story so convincing that a judge would believe it. Create a fiction so detailed that cross-examination couldn't break it. Become someone he wasn't long enough to keep 2 children safe. He looked at the photograph one more time. Catherine's smile. The twins wrapped in her arms. The skills that got Elena killed might be the only thing that could save Emma and Sophie. Marcus opened another search window. Family court judges. Multnomah County. Who would hear the case? What their history was? What arguments worked? What didn't? He had 5 days to prepare for the most important negotiation of his life. And this time, the hostages were already sitting in his living room. On Multnomah County Family Court smelled like floor polish and old paper. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Marcus sat at the defendant's table in a suit borrowed from a man at the bookstore who'd asked no questions when Marcus said he needed it for court. The twins sat behind him with a court-appointed advocate. Emma wore a blue dress. Sophie wore red. They'd spent the last 5 days drilling details until the lies sounded like memories. Vance's attorney entered first. Daniel Grayson, mid-50s, expensive suit. Wedding ring that cost more than Marcus made in 6 months. He carried a leather briefcase and moved like a man who'd never lost. Vance came in after him, composed, concerned, the face he wore for campaign posters. He glanced at Marcus, smiled, cold and certain. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Patricia Hernandez. Marcus had researched her. 20 years on the bench, known for skepticism, for cutting through nonsense, for demanding proof. All rise. The hearing began. Grayson stood, smooth, practiced. His voice filled the courtroom like he owned it. Your Honor, this case is straightforward. My client, Councilman Robert Vance, is the legal guardian of Emma and Sophie Vance, aged 12. Their mother, Catherine Vance, passed away 3 months ago. Since her death, Councilman Vance has provided a stable, loving home for these girls. Grayson gestured to Marcus. This man, Marcus Chen, is a complete stranger. He has no legal relationship to these children, no documentation, no prior custody filings. He's never appeared in their school records, their medical records, or any official document in their lives. Yet he's currently housing them in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment under the claim that he's their biological father. Grayson paused. Let the words sit. We believe Mr. Chen is either delusional or engaged in something far more sinister. We're asking the court to return these girls to their rightful guardian and investigate Mr. Chen for possible custodial interference. The judge looked at Marcus. Mr. Chen, do you have legal representation? No, Your Honor. Do you wish to make a statement? Marcus stood. His breathing was controlled. His hands were still. Every hour of training from Quantico lived in the way he held himself. Your Honor, I'm Emma and Sophie's father. Their mother and I had a complicated relationship. We met in Seattle in 2010. We tried to make it work. We couldn't. Catherine moved to Portland. I stayed away out of respect for the life she was building. Marcus's voice was quiet, steady, the tone that had talked armed men into surrender. When Catherine passed, the girls reached out to me. They needed their father. I came. That's all this is. A father stepping up when his children needed him. Grayson smiled like he'd been waiting for this. Your Honor, may I? The judge nodded. Grayson approached the bench, opened his briefcase, pulled out documents. Mr. Chen, if you're the girl's father, why isn't your name on their birth certificates? Marcus met his eyes. Catherine and I weren't together when they were born. She listed Vance as their father. It was complicated. Why are there no custody filings? No child support records? No evidence of any relationship with these girls before 3 weeks ago? We had an informal arrangement. I respected Catherine's wishes to keep distance while she was married. Mr. Chen, the girls' school records in Seattle show no contact with any father figure. Their medical records list Robert Vance as their legal guardian. Their grandmother has stated under oath that she never met you. Grayson's voice sharpened. Where's your evidence? Marcus kept his expression neutral. I don't have formal documentation, but I'm their father. Grayson turned to the twins. Emma, Sophie, would you approach the bench? The girls stood, walked forward. Their hands were clasped together. Emma, do you know this man? Emma looked at Marcus, then at Grayson. He's my dad. How long have you known him? Since we were born. Really? So can you describe a memory with him? Something specific? Emma didn't hesitate. Marcus had drilled her on this. We went camping at Mount Hood when we were 8. Dad taught us how to build a fire without matches. He made us hot chocolate with cinnamon. We saw a meteor shower. It was a perfect lie. Detailed, specific, impossible to verify. Grayson smiled. He pulled out another document. Your Honor, I have testimony from the campground at Mount Hood. No one named Marcus Chen has ever registered there. No reservations. No records. Emma's face didn't change. It was a different campground. I don't remember the name. Grayson turned to Sophie. Sophie, what's your father's favorite food? Sophie looked at Marcus. They'd covered this. Stir-fry, with snow peas. What's his middle name? Pause. They hadn't covered that. You're James, Sophie whispered. Marcus's middle name wasn't James, but Sophie had no way to know that. The judge made a note. Grayson moved closer. Sophie, does your father sing to you at bedtime? Sometimes. What does he sing? The lullaby, the one Mom used to sing. In Czech? Yes. Can you sing a line for the court? Sophie's voice was small but clear. She sang 4 lines in Czech. The lullaby Catherine used to sing. The twins had taught Marcus the words. He'd listened to them practice 100 times. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Chen, do you speak Czech? A little. Catherine taught me. Sing the next verse. Marcus's throat tightened. He knew the words. The twins had drilled him. But his pronunciation was wrong. He'd never heard Catherine sing it. Only the twins. He sang. The The check sounded rough in his mouth. Foreign. Yet the judge's expression didn't change. Grayson returned to his table, pulled out a final document. Your Honor, I'd like to request a DNA test. It's the simplest way to resolve this. If Mr. Chen is truly the girl's biological father, the test will prove it. If he's not, Grayson let the implication hang. The judge looked at Marcus. Mr. Chen, do you consent to a DNA test? Marcus's hands were steady on the table. His breath was controlled, but his mind was calculating angles that didn't exist. Yes, Your Honor. The court orders DNA testing for Marcus Chen and both minors. Results to be submitted within 72 hours. Until then, temporary custody remains with Mr. Chen under CPS supervision. We'll reconvene once results are available. The gavel struck. The hearing was over. Marcus stood. The twins walked to him. They didn't speak. When the courtroom emptied slowly, Vance remained in his seat, watching. Marcus guided the twins toward the exit. His hand rested on Emma's shoulder. Light. Protective. Vance intercepted them in the hallway. Marble floors, high ceilings, the echo of footsteps. He leaned close. His voice was barely above a whisper. When that test comes back, I'm taking my daughters. And then I'm taking yours. Marcus didn't respond. He kept walking. The twins stayed close. Outside, the sky was gray. Rain threatened but hadn't started yet. Marcus opened his car door. The twins climbed into the back seat. He sat behind the wheel. His hands gripped the steering wheel. Emma leaned forward. What happens now? Marcus looked at her in the rearview mirror. 12 years old. Terrified. Trying to be brave. He had 72 hours. 3 days before a DNA test proved he was a fraud. 3 days before Vance took the twins back. 3 days before criminal charges destroyed everything. 3 days to either prove the impossible or destroy Vance first. Marcus started the engine. He drove away from the courthouse knowing that the most dangerous part of this negotiation was just beginning. Marcus paced the length of his apartment. 6 steps one way, 6 steps back. The twins sat on the couch. Lily was in her room doing homework. The radiator clanked and hissed. 72 hours until the DNA test came back. 72 hours until everything collapsed. He had 3 options: run, confess, fight. Running meant taking the twins and disappearing. New city, new names, living on the run with 3 children. That was kidnapping. Federal charges. They'd be caught within a month. Confessing meant walking into a police station and telling the truth, handing the twins back to Vance, and hoping someone clean existed in a system Vance had already corrupted. That was abandoning them, sending them back to the man who'd killed their mother. Fighting meant what? Marcus didn't know yet, but he couldn't run, and he couldn't confess. So he paced. Emma watched him with dark, careful eyes. Sophie sat pressed against her sister, checking the locks for the 3rd time in an hour. Marcus had been watching them for days. The way they flinched when doors slammed. The way they woke at 3 in the morning, gasping. The way they checked every window, every exit, mapping escape routes from an apartment that was supposed to be safe. These weren't girls pretending to be afraid. These were girls who'd been running for their lives. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway. She wore her astronaut pajamas. Her homework was finished, and she should be getting ready for bed. Instead, she stood there, watching her father pace like a caged animal. Dad, Marcus stopped. Yeah? Can I ask you something? Of course. Lily came closer. She had Elena's eyes, her mother's way of asking questions that didn't have easy answers. If someone's in danger and you can help them, but helping means you get in trouble, What's the right thing to do? Marcus's breath caught. He knelt to her level, eye to eye. Why are you asking? Emma and Sophie are scared, really scared. You're trying to help them. But you look scared too. Marcus wanted to tell her he wasn't scared, that everything would be fine, that adults didn't get scared the way kids did. But Lily was too smart for lies. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. I'm scared. So what do you do? Marcus looked past her, at the twins on the couch, at the locked door, at the small, cramped apartment where 4 people were trying to survive something bigger than all of them. Elena's voice echoed in his memory, the last thing she'd said before Kiev. Do what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You do the right thing, Marcus said, even if it costs you. Lily studied his face. Okay. She went back to her room. Marcus stood. His hands weren't shaking anymore. His mind was clear. He couldn't beat Vance in court. He couldn't win with documentation he didn't have. He couldn't prove the impossible. But he could do what he'd spent 11 years learning to do. He could negotiate. Marcus pulled out his phone. Found a number he hadn't called in 9 years. Special Agent Sarah Reyna, his old partner from the Crisis Negotiation Unit, and the phone rang 3 times. Marcus Chen. Sarah's voice was surprised, cautious. I thought you were dead. Not yet. What do you need? Marcus laid it out. 2 children, a corrupt councilman, a murder disguised as an accident, a recording that proved bribery, a custody fight he couldn't win legally, and a plan. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Marcus, you don't have a badge anymore. You don't have authority. If this goes wrong, you're looking at federal charges, custodial interference, fraud, obstruction. I know. And you want to do it anyway? Marcus looked at the twins. Emma had her arm around Sophie. They were watching him, waiting to see if the stranger who'd claimed to be their father would actually fight for them. Yeah, Marcus said. I do. Sarah exhaled. Tell me the plan. Marcus walked her through it. I'll offer Vance a deal. Drop the custody case, and Marcus would return the twins along with the phone containing the evidence. Claim the girls fabricated everything. Let Vance walk away clean. Vance would agree, because Vance would think he'd won. And that's when Marcus would do what he'd always done best. Get the man talking. Get him comfortable. Get him to confess. We record everything, Marcus said. Position agents in the restaurant. When Vance incriminates himself, we move. This is insane. It's the only play we have. Sarah was quiet again. Marcus could hear her thinking, weighing risk against reward, protocol against justice. Where and when, she finally said. Tomorrow night, downtown, somewhere public. I'll send you the location. I'll coordinate with the field office. But Marcus, if this fails, I can't protect you. I know. Sarah hung up. Marcus made the second call. Not to Vance directly. To an intermediary. A lawyer who'd represented Marcus in a small legal matter years ago. Someone neutral. Someone Vance wouldn't suspect. The message was simple. Marcus Chen wants to negotiate. He'll return the girls and the evidence. In exchange, Vance drops all legal action. Meet tomorrow evening. Neutral location. Just the 2 of them. Within an hour, the lawyer called back. Vance agreed. The Heathman Hotel Restaurant. 7 o'clock. Marcus set the phone down. The twins were still watching. Waiting. Tomorrow night, Marcus said quietly. We end this. Emma leaned forward. What do you need us to do? And Marcus realized he'd been approaching this wrong. The twins weren't liabilities. They weren't children who needed to be hidden away while the adults fought. They were assets, witnesses, the key to making Vance confess. Marcus sat down across from them. I need to teach you how to be part of a sting operation. For the next 3 hours, Marcus coached them. Where to sit, what to watch for, how to act natural, how to capture video without being obvious, how to stay calm when everything inside them was screaming to run. He taught them the signals. A hand on the table meant record. A touch to his ear meant stop. A subtle gesture toward the door meant federal agents were moving. He taught them how to breathe through fear, how to control their faces, how to become invisible while watching everything. He taught them the same things he'd taught federal agents preparing for undercover work. Because tomorrow night, that's exactly what they'd be. Emma absorbed it like she was born for this. Sophie was quieter, but just as focused. They asked smart questions. They practiced until the movements felt natural. By midnight, they were ready. Marcus sent them to bed. They fell asleep on the couch, hands still clasped together. Marcus sat in the kitchen, made tea, stared at the wall. Tomorrow evening, he would sit across from a man who'd killed his wife and corrupted a city. He would offer that man exactly what he wanted, and then he would destroy him. It was the most dangerous negotiation of his life. And unlike every negotiation before it, this one was personal. Marcus finished his tea, checked the locks, turned off the lights. In 18 hours, he would either save 2 children who weren't his, or lose everything trying. Here, the Heathman Hotel restaurant smelled like seared beef and old money. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, the kind of place where deals got made and power changed hands over expensive wine. Marcus sat in a booth near the windows. 7 o'clock, exactly on time. Vance arrived 3 minutes later, silver hair perfectly styled, tailored suit, campaign smile firmly in place. He slid into the booth across from Marcus like he owned the building. He probably did. Mr. Chen. Vance's voice was smooth, controlled. I'm glad you came to your senses. Marcus kept his hands on the table. Calm, steady. The recording device was taped to his chest under his shirt. Every word would be captured. So we agree, Marcus said quietly. I return the girls, you drop the custody case, and we all move on. Vance leaned back. And the phone? Of the recording? Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out the phone the twins had used, slid it across the table. Vance picked it up, examined it. His smile widened. You have no idea what you've stepped into, Mr. Chen. You think you can play hero? You're a nobody, a bookstore worker pretending to be someone important. Marcus didn't flinch. I'm just a father protecting his daughters. Vance's smile sharpened, cold, predatory. Except they're not your daughters, and when this is over, I'll make sure you never see your real daughter again. 10 feet away, the twins sat at a corner table with a woman in her 40s. Agent Sarah Reyna, posing as their aunt. Emma had her phone on the table, recording every word. Sophie sat pressed against her sister, watching Marcus. Throughout the restaurant, federal agents blended into the scenery. A couple at the bar, a businessman reading a menu, the bartender wiping glasses, the waiter who'd taken Marcus's order. All of them listening, all of them waiting. Marcus leaned forward slightly. His voice stayed low. The girls said their mother fell, that it was an accident. Vance waved his hand dismissively. Catherine was drunk. She stumbled. Tragic, but these things happen. Was she drunk often? What does it matter? Marcus paused. Let the silence sit. A negotiator's trick. People filled silence with words. Words led to mistakes. Vance took the bait. Catherine was unstable, Vance said. Always asking questions, always digging into things that didn't concern her. The housing development, the permits, the zoning approvals. She couldn't leave it alone. She found something? She found paperwork she shouldn't have seen. Permits that were expedited. Payments that would have raised questions. Vance's voice hardened. She confronted me at dinner, in front of the girls, made accusations. What did you do? Vance smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I reminded her that some questions are dangerous to ask. Marcus kept his breathing even. His hands stayed relaxed on the table. The housing development on the east side. How much was it worth? $8 million in profit. Once the families were displaced and the land was rezoned. That's a lot of money. It's nothing compared to what's coming. The waterfront project, the Pearl District expansion. People like you don't understand how cities work, Mr. Chen. Progress requires difficult decisions. Catherine was collateral damage. Those families living in subsidized housing? Collateral damage. You learn to accept it. Marcus's voice didn't change. Quiet. Calm. And if people ask questions? You handle them. The medical examiner was easy. A campaign donation. A promise of future support. He ruled Catherine's death accidental. The police chief? Same story. The judge who signed off on the grandmother's incompetency ruling? I've known him for 20 years. Vance leaned forward. His voice dropped to a whisper. This is how the world works. People like us make the decisions. People like you follow them. And if you ever speak about what you think you know, if you breathe a word to anyone, I will destroy you. I will take your daughter. I will make sure you spend the rest of your life in a cell. Do you understand me? Marcus met his eyes, held them. Then he placed his hand flat on the table. The signal. Vance didn't notice. The agents moved. The couple at the bar stood, flashed badges, and the businessman dropped his menu. The bartender stepped out from behind the bar. The waiter blocked the exit. Robert Vance, you're under arrest. Vance's face went white, then red. He lunged across the table at Marcus, hands reaching for his throat. Two agents grabbed him, pulled him back, slammed him face down on the table. You set me up! Vance's voice cracked. No more charm, no more control. You're nobody. You're a bookstore worker. You can't do this. Marcus stood, stepped back, watched federal agents cuff the man who'd killed Catherine, who'd corrupted a city, who'd hunted two 12-year-old girls. Sarah Reyna appeared at Marcus's side. We got everything, every word, the confession, the threats, the bribery. He's done. An older man approached from the bar, mid-60s, FBI badge on his belt. How he stared at Marcus with recognition dawning in his eyes. I know that voice, the man said quietly. I worked a joint task force in Detroit, 2015. Barricaded subject with a hostage. You talked him out in under an hour. The man's voice carried. Other agents turned, listened. You're Marcus Chen, the older man said. The negotiator. The whisper spread through the restaurant. Agents who'd worked with him. Agents who'd heard the stories. The legend who'd walked away. Vance was still screaming threats as they dragged him toward the exit. This isn't over. I have lawyers. I have friends. You'll never... The doors closed, cutting off his voice. The twins ran to Marcus. Emma reached him first, Sophie half a step behind. Emma threw her arms around him. Her voice was muffled against his chest. You saved us. Marcus looked down at them. Two girls who'd trusted a stranger in a cafe, who'd gambled their lives on his kindness, who'd spent a week learning to call him Dad. He'd kept them safe. But the cost was everything he'd built in 9 years of hiding. His name was spoken. His face was recognized. His past was no longer buried. He'd sacrificed his anonymity to save 2 children who weren't his. And looking at Emma and Sophie, their hands gripping his shirt, their tears soaking through the fabric, Marcus realized he'd make the same choice every time. 2 weeks after Vance's arrest, Marcus stood in a different courtroom. This time, he was the defendant. The charges were clear: custodial interference, fraud, obstruction of justice. The district attorney was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who spoke in clipped, precise sentences when he had a case to make and political pressure to satisfy. Mr. Chen knowingly and willfully misrepresented himself as the biological father of 2 minor children. He harbored them in his residence. He fabricated a custody relationship that did not exist. Regardless of his stated intentions, the law is clear. Marcus sat at the defendant's table. No borrowed suit this time. His own clothes. A public defender beside him who looked overworked and underpaid. Vance was in federal custody, but his allies remained. Donors, political connections, people who wanted this story to go away quietly. And the easiest way to make it disappear was to make Marcus the criminal. The hearing was closed, juvenile court, the twins' names protected. But Marcus's wasn't. The judge was the same woman from the custody hearing, Judge Hernandez. She looked tired. "Does the defense wish to make a statement?" Marcus's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we request the court hear testimony from the alleged victims in this case, Emma and Sophie Vance." The DA objected. "These children have been through enough. They don't need to be subjected to—" "They asked to testify," Marcus's lawyer said. "It's their right." The judge allowed it. Emma entered first, then Sophie. They wore matching blue dresses. Their grandmother sat in the gallery. An older woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a bun. She'd been cleared of the incompetency ruling 3 days after Vance's arrest. Emma took the stand. Her voice was steady. "We asked him to pretend. We were running. We were scared. We saw him sitting alone, and we took a chance." The DA leaned forward. "Did Mr. Chen ever claim legal custody of you?" "No." "Did he enroll you in school under false pretenses?" "No. He kept us safe until real help could come." Sophie testified next, quieter, but just as clear. "He didn't kidnap us. He saved us." The grandmother took the stand after. She explained how Vance had manipulated the system, how he'd used his position to silence her, how Marcus had been the only person willing to stand between her granddaughters and a man who'd killed their mother. She'd hired Marcus's new lawyer, a woman who worked pro bono for families caught in impossible situations. The media had shifted too. Local news framed Marcus as the hero, the man who risked everything to protect 2 children, the former FBI agent who came out of hiding to do what was right. The DA's case began to crack under the weight of public opinion and the truth. The judge called a recess. 2 hours later, she returned with a decision. The charges of custodial interference and fraud are dropped. In exchange, Mr. Chen will provide full testimony in the federal case against Robert Vance. Marcus exhaled. The first full breath he'd taken in 2 weeks. He walked out of the courthouse a free man. 6 months passed. Marcus worked for a nonprofit now, training crisis negotiators in child protective cases, teaching them how to read fear, how to build trust, how to know when a child was telling the truth and an adult was lying. It wasn't the FBI, but it mattered. Lily had finished her Eclipse Mobile. It hung in her room next to the solar system. She was building a new one now, the Milky Way. Ambitious, complicated. She talked about being an astronaut, or a scientist, or maybe both. She didn't ask why her father didn't have friends anymore. He had colleagues, people who respected what he'd done, people who understood. On Saturday afternoons, Emma and Sophie visited. Their grandmother lived 2 neighborhoods over, a small house with a garden and a porch swing. The twins were healing, slowly, therapy, school, normal life returning in pieces. They called him Marcus, not Dad. That wasn't what this was, but sometimes, when Sophie had a nightmare, she called him in the middle of the night. And when he answered, half asleep, she whispered the word, "Dad, I'm here. I just wanted to make sure." "I'm here, Sophie. You're safe." Marcus visited Elena's grave on a Sunday in late spring. The cemetery was quiet, trees budding green, birdsong soft in the distance, and he knelt by her headstone, placed his hand on the cold marble. "I broke the promise," he said quietly. "I used the skills again. I put people at risk. I walked back into the fire." He paused. The wind moved through the trees. "But I think you'd understand. 2 girls needed help, and I couldn't walk away." He stayed for a long time, told her about Lily, about the twins, about the work he was doing now. "I finally remembered," Marcus said, "what you always told me, that the skills aren't the problem. It's what you use them for." He stood, touched the headstone one last time. "I'll keep doing it right, I promise." That evening, Lily set the table for 5. Marcus made stir-fry, extra vegetables, no meat for Emma, who'd recently decided to be vegetarian. Sophie helped him cook, learning how to chop carrots without cutting herself. As Lily talked about the Milky Way Mobile, Emma talked about marine biology class. Sophie talked about a book she was reading. The grandmother arrived with dessert, homemade cookies. The apartment smelled like ginger and cinnamon. They ate together. 5 people who weren't a family 6 months ago, who didn't share blood or history or last names, but who'd chosen each other anyway. After dinner, the twins helped wash dishes. The grandmother sat with Lily, looking at her mobile. Marcus stood at the window, watching the city lights. 9 years ago, he'd walked away from everything. Built a life so small and quiet that no one would notice him. No one would ask questions. No one would need him to be anything more than invisible. But invisibility hadn't protected anyone. It had just been hiding. Lily appeared at his side. "You okay, Dad?" Marcus looked down at her. 9 years old. Fearless. Elena's eyes looking back at him. "See, yeah," he said. "I'm okay." "Good." She went back to the table, showed her grandmother how the Eclipse mobile worked. Emma and Sophie joined them. Laughter filled the small apartment, warm and bright and alive. Marcus had spent 9 years trying to forget who he was, trying to bury the voice that had once talked down extremists and saved lives and walked into fire. But some things weren't meant to stay buried. He wasn't the negotiator anymore. He wasn't Special Agent Chen. He wasn't the man who'd lost everything in Kiev. He was something new, something rebuilt from the pieces. A father, a teacher, a man who'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the willingness to help someone, even when it cost everything. Marcus turned from the window, joined his family at the table, sat down among the laughter and the light. And for the first time in 9 years, the silence in his life wasn't lonely anymore. It was full.